Michael Weatherly and Cote de Pablo. Explaining Tony and Ziva's chemistry has me theorizing about ways they could return to NCIS for years. Fans of NCIS have debated what made Tony Donoso and Ziva David such an unforgettable television pairing. The chemistry between the charming former special agent and the fiercely independent Mossad officer wasn't something that could be manufactured by clever scripts alone. It was a rare television phenomenon that seemed to leap off the screen every time Michael Weatherly and Cote de Pablo shared a scene. Recently, hearing both actors reflect on the magic behind Tony and Ziva's relationship has reignited excitement across the NCIS fandom. Their explanations about trust, timing, humor, and emotional vulnerability have done more than remind viewers why Tiva became one of television's most beloved couples. They've also sparked a fascinating question. Could Tony and Ziva return to NCIS in a bigger way than anyone expects? The more I think about their comments, the more possibilities emerge. One reason Tony and Ziva worked so well was their balance. Tony was often impulsive, funny, and emotional. Ziva was disciplined, guarded, and intensely focused. Together, they created a dynamic that allowed each character to reveal hidden layers. Weatherly has often suggested that their scenes worked because they challenged each other constantly. Meanwhile, De Pablo has spoken about the deep respect that existed beneath the playful banter. That balance remains incredibly rare. Even now, years after they left the flagship series, few NCIS partnerships have generated the same level of investment from viewers. Fans weren't simply watching two agents solve crimes. They were watching two people slowly learn how to trust, love, and understand each other despite enormous personal obstacles. That's why their eventual reunion felt so satisfying. But what if it wasn't the end of their story? One theory that immediately comes to mind involves a major international investigation. Tony and Ziva have spent years building a life away from Washington. They've raised their daughter and found a degree of peace after countless personal tragedies. Yet peace rarely lasts long in the NCIS universe. Imagine a situation where an international criminal network threatens multiple agencies around the globe. The NCIS team discovers that the only people with direct knowledge of the organization are Tony and Ziva. Suddenly, McGee receives an unexpected phone call. A familiar voice says, "Hey, Proby." The audience instantly knows who it is. Tony and Ziva aren't returning because they're looking for adventure. They're returning because they're the only people capable of helping stop a crisis before it spirals out of control. Such a storyline would allow the franchise to honor the characters' growth while naturally integrating them back into the action. Another possibility feels even more emotional. What if Tony and Ziva returned not for a case, but for the team itself? NCIS has always been about family as much as investigations. Over the years, characters have come and gone, but the emotional connections have remained. If a beloved team member faced a life-threatening situation, it would make perfect sense for Tony and Ziva to return to support the people who once stood beside them. Picture McGee finding himself in serious danger. The news spreads quickly. Soon, familiar faces begin arriving from across the country. Among them are Tony and Ziva, who immediately step back into the protective roles fans remember so well. The investigation becomes secondary to the emotional reunion. Old friendships are revisited. Past memories resurface. The audience gets to witness how much these characters have changed while discovering that some bonds never truly disappear. Then there's the possibility that intrigues me most. What if Tony and Ziva returned as mentors? The NCIS team continues to evolve with newer agents joining the ranks. Bringing back Tony and Ziva as experienced veterans could create fascinating storytelling opportunities. Instead of reclaiming their former positions, they could help guide a new generation of investigators. Tony's unconventional instincts would undoubtedly clash with younger agents who rely heavily on technology. Ziva's practical experience would challenge recruits who have never faced the kind of field operations she survived. Their presence wouldn't overshadow the current cast. Instead, it would enrich the team dynamic by providing a bridge between the franchise's past and future. Perhaps that's the smartest path forward. After all, the greatest strength of Tony and Ziva's relationship was never simply romance. It was evolution. Fans watched them transform over many years. They made mistakes. They lost people they loved. They faced impossible choices. Through it all, they grew individually and together, a return that acknowledges that growth would feel authentic. Of course, there's another reason these theories seem increasingly plausible. The enthusiasm Weatherly and DePablo continue to show whenever discussing their characters is impossible to ignore. Their affection for Tony and Ziva remains evident. More importantly, they seem to understand exactly why fans connected so deeply with the pairing. They weren't perfect heroes, they were imperfect people who found strength in each other. That emotional foundation still resonates today. Television history is filled with popular couples, but very few continue generating excitement years after their stories appear to have concluded. Tony and Ziva belong to that exclusive category. Their chemistry transcended individual episodes and became a defining element of NCIS itself. Whether they return for a major crossover, a personal mission, a team reunion, or a mentoring role, one thing feels certain: fans are ready. The moment Tony flashes that trademark grin or Ziva delivers one of her sharp observations, viewers will immediately feel as though they've been reunited with old friends. And perhaps that's the real secret behind the chemistry Weatherly and DePablo describe. It wasn't just chemistry between characters, it was a connection that invited audiences to become part of the journey. Years later, that connection remains as strong as ever, which is why every new comment from Michael Weatherly and Cote DePablo inevitably leads fans down the same path of speculation. Maybe Tony and Ziva's story isn't finished after all. Maybe the next chapter is simply waiting for the right moment to begin.